Okay.
Okay, let's take a breath. Let's take another breath. We enter into the stillness. We enter into the silence. We steal away to the secret place of the Most High, the inner chamber, far away from the noise and the clatter of the world. As Jesus said to us to be not conformed to this age, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's what we come here to do. We come here to renew, to refresh, to rejuvenate. We give thanks for such a time as this, for the opportunities that are awaiting us. Create in us a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within us. Guide our steps, open our eyes, our hearts, and our arms. And I'm feeling the serenity prayer now. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so it is.
So it is.
Amen. That's just a timeless one, isn't it? It kind of cuts to the chase.
Yeah.
So, how you doing? Good, good, good. All right. So let's have a couple of reminders of the authority upon which we stand to do this work. Now is a good time to remember that. Let's take a couple from in the room, and then we'll take a couple from the phone and the Zoomers. So, anybody in the room want to remind us of the authority upon which you stand to be here doing this work?
I know that we are all one, and I am a demonstration of oneness. That is the flag upon which I plant the ground. Very good.
One more person in here. With the authority upon which you stand.
I stand upon the authority of being around for a long time and finding the place that makes the most sense of my life and the words that make the most sense. And I know what I know, that we are one and we are all connected to God.
Yes. Very good. So a couple of people who are some Zoomers. Some Zoomers. Who wants to tell us the authority upon which you stand to do this work? Okay, Ray?
It's always love. And when I say love, I'm not talking about I love you. I'm talking about love as an activity. Love as an embrace of how you show up, no matter how you show up. To see beyond how we show up to who is really showing up.
There you go. All right.
Is Ade.
Very good. And Rafe, were you behind my nomination?
It's possible. It's possible I could even be your campaign manager.
That's okay, because I'm her chief of staff. So we already have the logo.
The graduating students at the Holmes Institute, where Rafe is a student. Actually, it's where I met Lakeisha's, my old alma mater. Not that particular campus, but the program. And they always select a commencement speaker.
Oh, cool.
And I've been honored in the past to be able to have that. So he just told me that tag, I'm it.
Way to go, Ray.
Yeah. Anybody else zooming in? Upon what authority do you stand to do this work?
This is Ade. Hello, everyone.
Ade.
I am standing on the authority of a power deep within me that is beyond my wildest dreams, because I know in that place I am secured, I am safe, and I'm grounded.
Very good. Love it. Anybody on the telephone? What is it, star 6?
Star 6 if
Star
you're on
6,
the phone.
unmute yourself. Upon what authority are you standing to do this work? They might be doing different things. Anybody on the phone who can speak?
Go ahead.
Oh. Upon the authority which we stand, Well, I think that our truth is just so much greater than some of us acknowledge. And so the authority upon which we stand is in our true truth. As a collective, and people that have a responsibility to unite.
Is that the authority that you personally are standing on?
Yes.
Okay, then tell it to me like that. Tell me where you stand.
Well, the authority upon which I stand is that I have a responsibility here, and I have a greater truth, and that my true identity that's the authority upon which I stand, in my true power, my true nature.
Cool. Yeah. Does that feel different to you?
It does feel different, yeah. It does. Thank you for that. It feels more personal, empowering.
And where are you calling from?
We're calling from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. That's right. Very good. All right. Yes. Why is it important? This is kind of back to the beginning again. Why is it important to know the authority upon which you stand? Why is this important?
Because otherwise we'll have doubt, we'll falter.
Yes. You have doubt and you will falter.
You need to feel you're part of a continuum. There has to be an inevitability about your role, your destiny, and how it connects with that of a nation.
Yes. Beautiful way of putting it. Very, very good. So we're going to be talking about some next steps and some of the things that Elizabeth, did you want to say something?
You're allowed, I think.
Okay. Oh, am I loud? Well, hey.
You have to turn your own volume down, Elizabeth.
Let's put it this way. I have been accused of many things in my life, but never being soft-spoken. That will not be in my obit. There lies Deborah. Soft and demure.
I know Jay's gonna kick out.
As a matter of fact, if you ever heard my father tell the story about our first encounter with one another, back in the 50s, the dads were not there at the birth. So he arrives and the nurse apparently gives me to him, and I am hollering. I mean, I am screaming bloody murder. And he's like, well, what's wrong with her? and he said, does she have all her toes? Yeah. Does she have all her fingers? Yeah. He said, okay, well, I'll come back when she's in a better mood.
And how many months later?
Does that ever happen? Wait a long time.
That was our first encounter. So we're going to be talking about some of the places that we go from here, and really trying to pull in some of the things that we had been talking about with where they are now. There was no way of actually knowing exactly how the election was going to turn out, but it was really clear that there were certain things that we were going to need to understand regardless of who won, because there's a certain social political climate that we're in, and to be able to understand that climate. One of the things that's going on now, there's a movie that's out now called Loving. And I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but it's the story of the couple that are behind the precedent-setting case Loving versus Virginia, which the Supreme Court passed in 1967, where the Supreme Court at that point in time overturned the bans that were existing in regards to interracial marriages. And you might have remembered when we were talking about this, and I believe I even passed out some handouts that showed you kind of state by state what the restrictions were. And there was a point that I was trying to make about this, about how it fit in with the Jim Crow laws, and that we mistakenly think that the Jim Crow laws were just about discriminating against the Black people and the other minorities, when the Jim Crow laws were laws that kept the white people in place. And that's what folks weren't getting, that this oppression is not just against the minorities, but that the ban on interracial marriages was a ban on white people. In order to keep the white race pure, white people were not allowed to marry outside of their race. It's like folks weren't getting this. There's somehow or another that we're always making the discussion about, quote unquote, the minorities or the people of color, and we are missing that all of the racism and whatnot is equally pointed at white people and what they have to do and cannot do in order to keep those racial infrastructures in place. I bring it up to say that when you go to the movie, and I would like us to do that, I would actually like for those of us who live in Santa Cruz to pick some time this weekend and like go see the movie together. And like wherever you are, go see the movie so we can come back, and talk about it. But when you look at the movie, it's the story of a white man and a Black, I think, what was his name? Her name was Mildred. His name was, I can't think of his name now, but anyway, his last name is Loving. And Mildred isn't the one who went to jail. Okay? The white man went to jail, not the Black woman. The white man went to jail for marrying outside of the race. And I understand that the story isn't so much about the lawsuit as it is about their love affair, as it is about like the sweetness and whatnot of their relationship. But remember, this is in 1967.
Yes.
Okay. That's not that far away.
50 years ago.
This is in 1967. And I was making the analogy between this and the same-sex marriage cases because they build on one another. So all of the laws, if you read any of the court cases that were rulings in favor of same-sex marriage, were built on the precedent of the ruling that said it was okay to marry across races, using the exact same argument, saying that you should be able to marry the person that you want, and you cannot discriminate on the basis of race, gender, sex, whatever. You can't prohibit people from entering into contracts with, or from something as fundamental as the right to marry or the freedom to marry, restricting them from being able to choose who they want because of these particular characteristics. So in interracial marriage, the characteristic was the other person's race. So you can't discriminate against people because of their race. The same sex was saying you can't do that because of their sex. You can't just arbitrarily take away what is a fundamental right of theirs because of like who they are, so to speak. It's the same logic that's carrying through. When we were talking about the same-sex marriages, I was explaining, and we took a look at the at articles that were showing the states that still had bans against same-sex marriages when the Supreme Court ruled last year or the year before. I think it was last year. Those states have not changed. Okay. We make the mistake and think that just because the Supreme Court rules that overturns and wipes out the laws on the books. It doesn't. The states have to go in individually and change their laws. So I'm not certain, but I'd be willing to bet there are still states that have on their books that it's against the law for people to marry across races. Well, there are at least 14 states that still on their books have it against the law to marry same sex.
The decision actually talks about white supremacy in the written decision.
The written decision of Loving?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's quite
the
clear.
fact that Virginia prohibits only interracial marriages involving white persons demonstrates. Hold on, me around. So it says.
So tell them what you're reading from.
Okay, so this is just from Wikipedia, and it says the court concluded that all anti-miscegenation laws were racist and have been enacted to perpetuate white supremacy. There's this is quote, there's patently no legitimate overriding purpose independent of invidious racial discrimination which justifies this classification. The fact that Virginia prohibits only interracial marriages involving white persons demonstrate that the racial classifications must stand on their own justification as measures designed to maintain white supremacy. So other people could marry, just white people couldn't. So it's exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Because of the purity thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was that the mongrelization of the races. Okay? That if people marry, that the idea is that if you have people who marry who are opposite races, that you're mixing races that shouldn't be, and heaven forbid, there should be a child byproduct who's this mixed race, and you have now diluted and desecrated the white race. The reason why I'm bringing this up is when we say, where do we go from here, and the work that has to go on from here. We have to change the conversation. We have to change the conversation. And we must have the courage to have the conversation about supremacy. That's the conversation we never have. The conversation that we always have is about the discrimination of the other people and what's happening to them. But the only reason why it's happening to them is to protect the supremacy of the other people. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I'm saying that this is just the way that it is. And if we do not speak of it like this, we can't get rid of it. If we can't say, look, it's time to get rid of white supremacy, because it is raising its ugly head in a way right now that is off the charts and about to be reinforced and embedded once again.
Normalized.
Normalized, yes. Normalized and institutionalized once again in the fabric of our society, as well as our social systems, when you look at who's being put in charge and what their agendas are. So I want to be very clear about this. I'm not saying that we need to go around and point fingers at people and call them out for being white supremacists and pointing the finger like, oh, those are white supremacists. That's not the work that needs to be done. The work that needs to be done now is calling out white supremacy. That's different. Not these bad people over there, but this concept that is running amok everywhere, so that it's showing up from police relations, it's showing up in the xenophobia, of like the foreigners and all of the rest of that kind, and the illegal immigrants and all that. It's like it shows up in so many insidious kinds of ways. And this is where, and take a breath, this is where white people have to start standing up.
I think that's the biggest thing I've learned from this class, is that.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is when white people have to start standing up and saying, not in my name.
And it seems like when I talk about what's positive has come from this election, is that it seems more likely now that will happen, that more people are outraged, that more people are standing up for their brothers and their sisters. And it was awesome being in San Francisco this weekend and just seeing, just being immersed in diversity, and it's like, oh, this is what what's beautiful. And not just the positivity of white people standing up and saying it's outrageous, but also different minority groups joining together, looking beyond their differences, Muslims and Jews and the LGBT, everybody, so it's not like, well, this is our problem and this is our problem and this is our problem, but we all got a problem that we can stand up.
Yes. I'm going to open this up for a second, but I just want to make this analogy. This is similar to what it's like. Let's just say you're raising kids, okay? And you've been with all these families together and you've been raising these kids, where there comes a point in time when your kids start becoming adolescents and adults, where as parents, you just have to back the hell off. As parents, you just have to kind of say to yourself, you know what, it's over. Not that we're not their parents anymore. We're going to have relationships with these people for the rest of our lives, but that there was a certain position of supremacy and authority and power and whatnot that you had that you just don't have anymore. You know what I mean? And you got to get used to it. You got to regroup. It's not a bad thing. You find new ways, of relating, but whereas the parents yourself, you have to relinquish it. You acknowledge that you had it, but if you keep trying to lord over your kids when they're 17 the way that you did when they were 7, it's not going to be pretty. And it's very similar as people start coming into their power, and the rest is very similar. They're like, back off. Now, you can make this pretty or you can make this messy, but choose it. Choose it, and then there's another way then that the parents start redefining who they are as parents. And you help each other out in that, and you kind of like get over it. But it is a shift of your identity. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm saying is that white people now, not just in America, but around the world,
Definitely.
This thing that's been happening for the past 300 or 400 years is that we got to get over it and say that day is over. We need to start showing up differently. And that's a conversation, white person to white person, that has to happen. Not just individual white people going to people of color and saying, I'm your ally, and I'll help you in whatever it is that you can do to lift yourself up. But to say, no, we're going to tackle the very belly of the beast, so to speak. Not just how can we get a few people to slip through the cracks so that they're not so marginalized within this system, but how can we get rid of the system that's marginalizing by shifting our relationship with it, calling for a change wherever it is that we are. Okay, so now I'm going to open this up because this is fundamentally this, like, where are we going from here? Yeah, so I saw Russell's hand and Beverly's hand here.
So I want to go back about 15 years before living, when I was coming of age as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And the conversation was about, it's not a good idea to date a Black person because you might fall in love, you might get married, you might have a child, and it wouldn't be good for the child, the sweet, innocent child. So I'm just listening here, it was like one step farther away in how we got brainwashed into going along with this white supremacy thing.
Yeah, tell us where you were raised. And where were you living then? I
was living in New York State. There were very few Blacks. If they were going to schools and churches, it was out in the countryside. Mm-hmm. And another thing too, because it's a similar thing, my life was a soap opera. The minister's daughter was dating the altar boy. And it was the talk of the town. And both her mothers were really upset. And we broke up, we got together, we broke up, we got together. And I was like, I wish she'd just back off. So I could know whether I'm really in love with the altar boy or rebelling against my mother. Yeah. So, it's a similar thing if it were Black, I guess she would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Russell?
Yeah, what you just mentioned was the conversation. White people were talking to white people, don't do it. Mm-hmm. Which is just stops what we do. Mm-hmm. But I don't get the sense that it's about white supremacy. I get the sense it's about white male supremacy because white women are actually under attack also. Congress did pass that equal pay for equal jobs law last year. They want to take out, abortions again. They want to take out birth control clinics.
Put a Planned Parenthood. Slide out a little bit.
Yeah, so they want to take out Planned Parenthood. I mean, and that's just natural for women. Just women's health issues.
Yes, it is layered, but it is white supremacy. Don't mix it up, whatever, because the protection of white females is at the core of this white supremacy. That it is thick and it is deep. And this is one of the main contentions amongst people of color around quote unquote affirmative action, that women got put under the banner of quote unquote minorities. But when you look at who the winners have been, so to speak, of all of the efforts, affirmative action efforts, it's white women who are the ones who have come out on top. They're the ones who are getting the CEO positions and, you know, the contracts and the, you know, the degrees and the management positions and all the rest of that, that racism has still kept that intact. So it's like, yeah, they may be women, but they're still within that bubble, like protection of that. That's not to say that you are right, that at the top of the food chain, so to speak, are white males in terms of that. But this supremacy thing, this is deep. And it is so deep that the way that it plays out amongst women, how can I put it? Women, because they raise the children, are the reinforcers of all the isms. They're the ones who have to teach it. And you can't separate race and class. You really can't separate gender and class. And the gap, when you look at the vote, for example, for Hillary Clinton, the vote was bigger between women. The class gap between white, uneducated women and educated women was bigger than the gap between the male and female vote for Hillary. And that those white women were standing in a particular spot that was about protecting all of this other stuff that we were talking about, and not about aligning with one another on the issue of sex. That did not pull it over. The division around race and class was bigger and remains bigger than solidarity around sex.
Yep.
The solidarity around sex, it just doesn't exist.
Hmm. Rev D, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. So Elizabeth, this is a great conversation. I really appreciate it so much. And forgive me if I'm repeating something. It's a little hard to hear some of the call-ins and a little bit of what you're saying. But I know I missed all the sessions before the election. I kept thinking I'd get there, and then I didn't feel the urgency till after. So I know you've probably covered this, but you have such a great view of the sort of historical and the bigger picture. And I'm just wondering, I know there's a divide and conquer thing going on very strongly right now, but also, is there any other insight into, sometimes it helps me to take action when I understand why, like, why is it so bad right now? I don't know if you have an answer for that, but it's just, you know, it's like, wow, what is this worldwide? I mean, here in the US, it's very strong right now, of course, but you know, it's in France, it's in wherever, Philippines, it's everywhere, right? Europe.
Yes, I have been talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No,
I'm sure.
that's okay. And I strongly encourage. I strongly encourage you to go to YouTube and look at some of the prior trainings and stuff that we've been doing here. It's under my name, and for such a time as this. And there really is something that's going on here. It's like it's playing out in the United States, but this is not the only place. We can watch what just happened in England, you know, and breaking off from the European Union to just remain English.
Right.
You know, there's something that's going on now. It is a deep changing of the guard.
Mm.
It is a huge changing of the guard. I also suggested to people that they read a book that's out now that's rapidly climbing the charts by one of my colleagues, Robert Jones. He's one of the foremost researchers in the United States. He's also a minister. and he has a book now out called The End of White Christian America. And he does a beautiful job of explaining the dynamics, the socio-demographic profile, and explaining that right now, white Christians are a minority in the United States. That's extraordinary. It's like it's tipped. It's like the tail, the scare. And I'm not just talking about evangelicals, and even if you throw the Catholics in, that white Christians are now a minority in the United States. This is huge. So part of these conversations around the supremacy have to really kind of grapple with that, because quite frankly, most white people don't know how to be the minority.
Right.
And it is offensive that they are the minority. And the slightest idea that maybe they've been discriminated against, or maybe it hasn't been quite fair, boom! I mean, it's just, boom! There's just this rage and this anger, because it's so displacing. And there's some retraining that has to happen here. There really is. Were you trying to say something, Kim?
The fact that the white Christians, I mean, so much of the struggle that's going on is them trying to keep a stronghold on the power they think that they have. And it's an illusion that they think they have it. But so much of what is driving that supremacy is this idea and this illusion of holding on to, like you keep saying, going back to the founding fathers. And it's over. It's over. They just haven't realized it.
Right.
I mean, the white Christians.
Right.
You know, their day is done.
Right.
And they just haven't come to that.
They haven't figured it out yet.
Haven't not figured it out.
And we've got to usher it in. You know, it's how costly will the funeral be?
Exactly.
From a theological standpoint, they all go together. And this is where the sort of big newsflash is coming. The way that the construct of race was created, it was created around the notion, take a breath, that God is white. I mean, this is really serious. That God is white. That we have been made in the image and the likeness of God. And that God is white. And since God is white, the construct of race was set up that white people were on the top of the humanity pecking order. So black people were not human. You got to let that sink in there. That the way that they could justify the transatlantic slave trade is that black people were not human. The Pope declared that black people did not have souls. The Pope declared the same thing about the native indigenous peoples. But they were held a little bit higher, such that in the United States, the big native tribes also had African slaves. They were allowed to have slaves as well. When you look at social movements, and particularly as people are coming up from the marginalization, one of the first things that they do is they rename themselves, because the names that they had were names that were put upon them by the ruling group. And there will often be this reversal twist to reclaim something. So part of the Black Power movement of saying we got soul wasn't about rhythm. It wasn't just about you know, style and funk. It was this direct push. I am somebody. I am somebody. We got soul. Can you feel? It's this direct, or like the homosexual community deciding we're gay. That was in direct response to being labeled sick, depraved, maladjusted. And it's like, no, baby, we're gay, with the play gay being all about happy. You know, happy and free. Gay just didn't mean like, you know, we got style and panache, but gay was similar to the black thing. It's like, no, we are not. That's not what we are. Okay, and you'll find this thing happening all the time, or the younger people now talking about, hey, we're queer. So yeah, we're off the beaten, and you try to use that against us, but we're going to claim that. Yeah, we're going to claim that, and we're going to stand in that as a point of beauty. When I was growing up, the word black was a fighting word. All you had to do was call somebody, you black whatever, the fight was on. So this conscious reclaiming and saying, why are we fighting? We have been so brainwashed that black and anything from Africa means bad, that we are going to consciously reclaim this association with Africa as good. And we're going to redefine black from being bad to being something that's good. I remember being part of the movement for the gay movement to rename itself the Gay and Lesbian Movement. And I'm really pleased to have been on the board of the LA Center, which is still the largest LGBT organization in the world, to get them to change the name to that. And it was very similar, our logic, to the word black, because all of it was happening around the same time. Does anybody know the origins of the word lesbian?
Lesbo is the island of Lesbos.
It's an island in Greece. Lesbos. Okay, and what was happening is that the Greeks weren't necessarily that homophobic, but they were very misogynistic. Women were not allowed, like Juliet in Romeo and Juliet was played by young boys. Women were not allowed in the theater and culture and whatnot. And they were banned and exiled to this island called Lesbos. And then people started going to it. Women started going to it. So they had poetry and art and all this rich culture. And these women were referred to as lesbians because they had this rich women's culture. So as we started claiming that name, it had absolutely nothing to do with sex or sexuality. But it was saying, look, there is a rich culture and a rich history that we're going to go and we're going to reclaim and identify with it and not be made to feel bad about it. Like that's what's going on. That's what's happening within that. We know when we look at this whole hierarchy food chain thing that some people have been put on the bottom, but we forget that that's just a tool. That's just a means to an end, and it's not the ends itself. The end was to make sure that white was supreme. So you have white close to God, then you have white people made in the image of God, and then you put Christianity in a supremacist position of protecting that. So these isms get reinforced from all different levels. It's not just one thing. Are you with me? It's not just one thing. So then the charge of the Christian, it's insidious. So then the charge of Christianity becomes to proselytize and make everybody Christian under our white God. Okay? So your gods get wiped out. Your culture, your religion, your language, your everything get wiped out as you become white homogenized. And this has been going on all over the world. And now there's a pushback. And I'm being very explicit about this because this is part of the subcontext and the anger that's happening in the Middle East and around our presence in the Middle East and what our agenda is in the Middle East, because part of the agenda here is not about oil. Part of the big agenda is to proselytize and to convert the Muslims to Christianity. That's what's going on, and that's part of the battle here, is the vilifying of the Muslim religion, the vilifying it, as though its very presence is anti-Christian and therefore an attack.
And what's interesting in history is Muslims don't do that.
I know.
They don't try to convert. They'll go in, but if you respect your religion, you respect our religion, they don't try to convert. That's that's in the history of Islam, that's not what they did.
No, and most people don't.
Yeah.
I really want you to catch this. This imperialism thing that we've got going on here about spreading white and about spreading Christian, and everybody else is lower than and at the bottom of, it's thick because it's supremacy on top of supremacy on top of supremacy. So now we don't talk about it as white supremacy. We don't talk about it as Christian supremacy. Now it's characterized as American supremacy.
Democracy.
It's nationalism now. Make America number one, the best in the world, the leader of the free. Make America great again. It's a euphemism. It is a euphemism for let's bring back the domination of white Christian, where it's the norm. It's the norm.
So I'm seeing how those people who want to say defend Obama,
Could you speak
not really Muslim.
Could you speak louder?
Oh,
Please.
I'm sorry.
It's
Now
hard.
I kind of lost my thought, but it was about this whole birthing thing. That somehow there are people that want to justify that Obama's okay because he really isn't Muslim. And they're Obama supporters. When really it should be, so what?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Even if he were a practicing Muslim.
Even if he were a practicing Muslim, it should be okay. But that's not where we are right now.
That's right.
Okay? Because of this, like, normalization, what it is that we have to protect,
And demonization.
and the demonization.
So
It goes back a long way.
the test for America is going to be if Keith Ellison becomes the leader of the Democratic Party, because he's practicing Muslim.
Well, maybe, but see, we thought the same thing about Obama. Like, we got a black president, suddenly we were post-racist. is bigger than any one person getting anywhere. Is deeper than that. But it'll be a good marker.
It seems to me the fundamental problem, which is we're different, or it seems that we're different from visual experience. And there's two things that have happened since the early 40s that have changed that picture, have seeded the change. And someone said we live in a world that is it's not yet born. The new world is not yet born. It's like we're pregnant, we're in transition, it's in the oven, but it hasn't been birthed yet.
I agree with that.
And the two things I was referring to were the picture from space, when we saw our home without frames and without boundaries. And when Einstein said in 1940 something that everything has changed except our way of thinking. And seeing someone else as an enemy, whether it's because of the white supremacists or whatever, we have to move to a position of what are we for. And I am for the celebration of diversity. And maybe that's the segue to the conversation as to what you're for, to talk about the white supremacists in an effort to be tactful and engage the conversation rather than hit someone over the head with you're a white supremacist. But the minute you do that, you point the finger at someone, there's three fingers pointing back at you.
You're right. And I want to reiterate, I am not saying that you need to go up to people and tell them that they're a white supremacist. What I am saying is that we have to be honest about how to get from A to B. We have been talking about diversity for decades, but we have been talking about it one-sided. We have been talking about it from the side of how do we include the minorities, that the word diversity becomes a euphemism for everybody else. White people don't even think of themselves. If you say there's going to be a diversity conference, oh, that's going to be those other people. That like I'm not even included in that. The same way if you talk about sexual orientation, most heterosexuals don't even see themselves in that. Well, that's like those other people. That what is incumbent upon us now is to add on there, to say, I am for the diversity. I am for all that. And it's time now for us to let go of the white supremacy so we can get there. For us. And I'm not talking about them, that they are white racists. But for those who are claiming to want the diversity, who are claiming to want the new order, for them to get it out of their mouth. And whether you use the term supremacy or not, unless attached to that, as you make it very plain. Look, nobody's better than anybody else. And those of us who have been overprivileged, just like there's underprivileged, those of us who've been overprivileged, we need to let that go. Okay, everything's not going to look like us. It's not going to be on our standards. We're not going to be able to set the agenda. You know, that has to be communicated really clearly. The change, the step, like what is this that has to happen? And it's a news flash. I'm telling you, it's a news flash because we have been treating it such that white people can bear the standard and we can just keep the melting pot theory. We can just keep adding more people into this. They can enjoy what we have. They can look like us and dress like us and have our American dream and all the rest of that, as long as they give up whatever it is that they are. And now the tables are flipped. The melting pot is over. We got a salad bowl now. We got a garden. We got something else going on here now where people are not interested in Anglicizing their names. They are not interested in giving up their religions. They are not interested in giving up their languages. They're not doing it. And that somehow, even if it's just something as simple as saying, look, we all got to make sure that our children speak a second language, okay? Because the world where we're just expecting to be on top and everybody's going to speak English, that's over. That's over. And those are tough conversations, but if we can't have them, you know, it's that concentric circles, the way the theory of change happens, where you get a cadre, you get a mass of people in the center, and they start having those conversations with one another, and then it grows and it grows and it grows. But now is the time to start having those conversations. I can only do so much. I can teach, I can give people tools, but I can't be there. There are discussions that go on, I know they go on when I'm not there, and I can't be there. So all I can do is encourage the people in the room to have the courage to start naming it. Say, look, our country never was built for, you know, oneness and diversity. We never did it. It's time to start doing it now.
That was our talk at Thanksgiving.
Say that?
That's what we talked about at Thanksgiving in my little bubble. that was what we needed to be doing, and recognizing the fact that it's an ideal. My mother-in-law's wife got herself a little pocket constitution. So it has the Declaration of Independence. We were passing it around and reading different parts of it, and I was sharing all the stuff we learned in this class. And yeah, so that was Thanksgiving. Yeah, it fits in her purse, and yeah. So Chris was reading it out loud, and we were like breaking it down like we have been in this class, and talked about how, yeah, it's an ideal to work for, but we're not there.
Okay, I see that Linda has raised her hand. Linda Kimball. Oh, Linda?
Linda.
Did you want to speak?
There I am. Hi. I don't know if this is the perfect moment. I did notice that Ade had a comment that was worth bringing up about being called minority, and how he refrained from using that in the context, unless he's talking about numbers, since it means less than. And I really love that point. The reason why I wanted to just mention something was, keeps coming up for me in the beginning. I couldn't get my devices to work to say in what I stand, but today, if it really all boils down for me, as I stand in my appreciation for life, all of life, that's so important, and that you know, it goes beyond humans. It goes, you know, it goes into nature and everything else. And one thing that I wonder how we weave this in, because I think it's part of the picture of why white supremacy is so strong in America as well as other places, is partly due to capitalism, which is based on the exploitation of labor. So there's always got to be a hierarchy. And whether there's a minority or not, there's always got to be a hierarchy. And it's also based on the exploitation of natural resources. And in times such as this, we have, you know, nature is what is driving all the immigration, you know, the mass migrations. We've had mass migrations before and had major troubles before. And I just want even these conversations to encompass that. And I know they can.
Yes.
It's really important, I think. And I think we need to be talking about how I really love this conversation where you took us back to the building of white Christianity and supremacy. And I mean, these people are afraid. They are afraid of not only being a minority, but they already might have already lost their businesses and their jobs and their pursuit of happiness per se. And it's like, what is going on? And then there's a lot of acting out that happens, because it's like, well, I don't have anything to lose. I'm just going to bomb this place, or, you know, really get mad or whatever. So I agree that we need to be building ourselves up and what we want and what our vision is, and work and what our values are, and work from there.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Linda. And it is the exact same consciousness. That's why I keep being so emphatic that we have to call it out as supremacy. Okay, the exploitation, once again, is not the purpose. It's not the ends. Exploitation is a means to an end.
All right, I see. Yeah.
The purpose of maintaining the supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we keep talking about the means as though it is the ends, we are forgetting what the driving force is. So within this construct, not only is God white, but the interpretation of their scriptures is that God put humanity at the top of the food chain, who then has the right to do anything with anything. So there's this way, it's the supremacy thing again. So it has humanity, and thus then humanity's needs above everything. And it doesn't even have the planet and humanity as connected. In this theology, they are completely separate. And that the planet has no other purpose than a utilitarian purpose. But there's no sense of an inherent relationship between the two other than one of dominion. See? So it keeps, it's like it keeps reinforcing and reinforcing and reinforcing. So then humanity is above all species. So you have species, then you have humanity at the top, not in an evolutionary sort of sense, but that humanity is its own thing that isn't connected to the animals or the insects. Nothing's evolved on anything. There's the planet, there's insects, there's animals, and then there's this creation called man, who has been given the dominion and the power, and here's where the capitalism part comes in there, to not only control, but to own. To own. So we have this unholy alliance here between the concept of individual ownership and collective responsibility and domination. This Christianity and this framework, and we miss this a lot of times, it's not about theology. It's not about an individual religion. The way that it's viewed comes out of a Judeo-Christian context, where the view was that God is in covenant with humanity. And how humanity is treated by God, in favor or not, has to do with how humanity operates as a society. Not just like an individual punishment, you're going to hell, you're not going to hell. But whether God brings favor on us or smites us with floods and famines or allows us to prosper and all, depends upon how much we are obeying the covenants. So this kind of policing responsibility to make certain that nobody breaks the law, so to speak, lest we all be punished. So the stuff it's state like for abortion or same-sex marriage, whatnot, it isn't about, in their minds, individual freedoms and what individual people have to do. It's God's going to punish all of us. That what you do is going to impact my family and me, and God is going to hold me and the rest of us accountable for you. It's that hierarchy thing, just like the idea that the law is going to hold the parents responsible for what happens in the household. When you're at the top of the food chain, then the perception is that you're the one that's being held accountable. So you got to whip it, this law and order thing, you got to whip everybody into shape to make certain that you're back in control, that things are how they ought to be, and back in God's favor. It's a different worldview. But if we don't get that this is the worldview, then our ways of dealing with it keep going awry, because we're talking apples and oranges. We're talking individual freedoms and issues and whatnot, and they're talking about collective responsibility, power, ownership, and there can't be room in that paradigm for you as the individual to like have your way when it's going to impact God's favor towards me. And God's going to hold me accountable. Or did I save your ass? It's on me to save you from yourself, from your wickedness, from your lust, from your desires, from your hedonism, from your sickness, your lusts. You don't know what you're doing. I mean, it's like breathing in. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic here, but unless we kind of get the paradigm that we're in, we're barking up the wrong tree here. So there was some comments coming in. So they said, like, am I, what was that? Rafe says?
Rafe says, I believe we tell the truth. Become willing to engage in the challenging conversations in a loving dialogue, willing to be with others in their process and pain without colluding with them, to be present with them in their process seeking, first to understand, to create relationship before content.
Yes.
Thus the concept, I am my brother's keeper.
Yeah, but see, even that I am my brother's keeper. Okay. Yes. Okay. This is tricky. That first comes into the Bible in Genesis, when the first two sons of Adam and Eve are Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel in the story, and when God is trying to get some accountability,
yeah,
and asking Cain,
he was saying, I am my brother's keeper, in reference to what you were just saying, like we have to police each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's, you know, God's asking Cain, well, hey, where's your brother? Now he's already killed him, but he's like, hey, how am I supposed to know? Am I his keeper? Like, why are you asking me where he is? And you done already killed him. Yes. Yes. This notion of being our brother's keeper is like, we haven't established that yet, is what I'm saying. That we have not established that that's what we are to be. We've done it a little bit. If you look at things like the social welfare systems and things that we've set up, like Social Security or whatnot, every now and then we make that quantum leap. But even then, it's just for a certain group of people. It's not to be for everyone. Social Security was not available for people who weren't white. No, it took a lot to make that happen.
Yeah, going back to the idea of individual ownership, when I was growing up in New York State, the history of the people and the religious sect that settled the Hudson Valley was very much around, if I'm wealthy and have a big house and all of these signs, that's a sign that God favors me. It was very much a part of that period of time. And if you're poor, then God, you must be doing something that God isn't favoring you, or you in a better position.
Well, there is that perception among many that shows the favor, which is part of what's behind the building of the mega churches and all of these ostentatious displays of wealth being reinforcing that. Not that it's exploitation or overprivilege, but God is blessing us this way. Yes, there's some of that. I want to make sure some of you who were online or on the telephone, comments? Yes.
You have to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
Yeah. Hi, it's Elizabeth.
Oh.
Elizabeth?
Okay, Elizabeth first and Jenny.
Okay. This is brief. I just really, really appreciate your perspective, bringing in the religious aspect and the fact of the dominator culture, even though, like you said, in this country it was a class thing, not women. This whole patriarchal system that's, you know, set up around the whole world. It's really interesting to see how it connects with these deep, deep, unconscious spiritual aspects, and I really appreciate that. I'm just taking in a lot, and I don't want to, you know, say much more about that. The other thing I just want to mention super briefly is there's a group called the Christian Left. I follow them on Facebook, and they're really looking for donations right now because they do good work, really good work, even if you just want to follow them on Facebook, and they're trying to help people remember that there are Christians out there who are Jesus-like and who are, you know, I'm not even Christian myself, but I'm just saying it's easy to print Christianity with a broad brush, and I know you don't do that, Rev D, but sometimes it's important, again, not to otherize there. Yeah. Obviously, we know which type we're talking about here, but, you know, there is a Christian left that's very strong, and I have some Christian friends that are really incredible and in gay marriages and whatever. Anyway, thanks. But thanks for this is a great session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'm not talking about people, right? I'm talking about concepts, constructs, ideas, paradigms, where we're rooted. And I was seeped in it. You know, I get it. I understand it. I grew up very, very fundamentalist, very evangelical. You know, the evangelicals are the ones that are out there like proselytizing and trying to convert. You know, I grew up charismatic. I grew up Pentecostal. I grew up all of it, you know, in the thick of it. It's like I get it. I see it. You know, it's like I understand it. And what I would suggest that we do from here is we don't have to be like angry or judgmental. The concept that I find helpful in situations like this is the concept of unexamined assumptions. Unexamined assumptions. That there are ways in which we have been building society on these certain assumptions that we have just all taken for granted, and we haven't thought about them anymore. So even if you just bring it up like that, like, you know what? There's this unexamined assumption we have had about Christian supremacy. or there's this unexamined assumption that's been running everything about white supremacy, or there's this and I think it's time for us to examine this. You know, I think, it's time for us to just take a look at this. Then it's not finger pointing, it's not a bunch of blame, here, there, but just to say, in essence, it's like the analogy I make sometimes is a computer program. So if you get Microsoft Word, it is already pre-programmed with certain default settings, certain fonts, margins, with the anticipation of what you want. Now, you can change it to anything, but few people ever learn to program enough to change it. And they just open it up, take it out the box, and use it with the default positions. That's where we are in our society. We're in default positions. And if we don't consciously do something else, we will always revert to the default position, which is the status quo. If we do not actively set something else into motion, we are going to wind up with what we've had. It's physics. You don't change your direction, you're going to wind up where you're headed.
That isn't going to happen with this new president. There's 53 million people plus that are going to speak up.
Say that again.
Well, but this is not a new battle. It's just been like this sparring off, kind of like of who's going to win this thing. And we keep going up and down and up and down like a ping pong thing. So this one wins, and then, okay, next year we're going to kick them out. And it's a swing, from Bush to Obama to Trump to Clinton, Bush to Clinton to boom, 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 boom. And if we're going to do something besides a ping pong match every 4 to 8 years, if we're really going to break through something, we have to shift. We have to make a change, because 51% is nothing. 51% is still a house divided. And we're calling for something new now. And we have to be able to do it with ourselves so we can do it around the planet. The rest of the world is looking at us. And they are holding us accountable. We have a military force that is in 120 countries. And even this idea of like us first and this nationalistic view, it is a figment of our imagination. There is nothing on this planet that happens nationalistic anymore. Nothing. Not a company, not a resource. You could take anything. You could just take this tripod and this little camera. And who knows how many companies, from what nationalities and what parts of the globe this little thing came from. It is so intermingled now that if we don't start having a view of ourselves as a global citizen that's part of a global economy, and get over this idea of us and our nation, it doesn't exist. It does not exist. None of our companies are selling just to us. That's not how it's like the world just isn't like that anymore. And nobody knows that better than Trump. When you look at where he gets his stuff manufactured and made and all of the people, he's not dealing with America. It doesn't work that way. But we're playing on these fears of the supremacy. And it's time to change. It's time to start a new conversation about the unexamined assumptions, about being on top, being in control. being in the lead, being the one that gets to call all the shots, and have everything around just protecting us. Bold new conversations now.
Elizabeth, did you want to say something?
Jenny had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Jenny.
So, how in heaven's name are we going to reach this point of oneness without meditation?
You don't.
That's my question, because before I started meditating, I was, probably just as bad as Trump or they, I had a very different mindset and consciousness.
No, you don't do it without meditation. I put out there, quite frankly, that these sessions weren't for everybody, that there were some prerequisites, and was having a spiritual practice of oneness, which is going to require some meditation. This is not for the faint-hearted. You can't just show up to this party. This party is not for everybody. Everybody can't do this work. Some people can, and those of us who can have to roll up our sleeves and get it started.
Amen.
But not everybody's ready for this. No way.
No, but how do we change more rapidly? How do we get the world to change more rapidly, the consciousness?
Don't worry about getting the world to change. Who can you talk to? Who's in your sphere? Who do you want to bring on to these Zoom conversations? Who do you want to share the archives with? What group do you want to have in your space when we do this stuff? What group of people do you, I'll Skype in, I will Skype into you. If you get a group of people, I will Skype in. It's the low-hanging fruit. Don't worry about the masses way out there. That's not how change works.
Yeah, but I'm thinking because this has been for centuries, for God knows how.
Yes, but you haven't been in it. You haven't been in the conversation.
That's right.
Okay? It's literacy, one by one.
Okay.
Your reading doesn't help my reading. You got to learn how to read.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So we are creating a certain degree of literacy now, so that we can change the conversation, so that we can have something different. All I'm doing right now is trying to get your will and your intent and your confidence that you're up and ready for it.
We're all invited.
Yes, don't worry about everybody else. Okay? And Jenny, I recognize Jenny, then we gotta go. Unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for this, all of this. I felt very fortunate this last week that the people that I was around and that were around me, I feel very lucky that I sit at a table with people and we have these kinds of conversations. And I recognize that not everybody has that. So I was very thankful for that. I think for me, I am in contact. I do have people that obviously think this way, have this consciousness. I think for me, the challenge and what I was asking before in the chat was for those people who have the conversation and it comes from fear. I'm talking about people who perhaps are in the music business with me that live in places like Kentucky and Tennessee and Georgia. And if we get into a conversation and their fear comes up and their anger comes up, to me, that's not the inner sphere that we're talking about here. And let's say we have a conversation. How do I engage in that conversation? And if it is about fear, I'm kind of wondering, can we talk about how to enter into a conversation with somebody who is obviously not even apologizing for their white supremacy and not even apologizing for their stance? Is there a way to engage in a conversation with them where I can ratchet it down? And I mean, how do you talk to a white supremacist about oneness? That's my question. And alleviate their fear.
And I'm going to give you the same answer. Is that basically, if you're not a trained professional, don't try. Don't try to convince a white supremacist. What you can do is develop your heart space. What you can do is listen. Listen. What are they so afraid of? Because when people are in fear, they don't feel powerful. When people are in fear, they're feeling powerless. When people are in fear, they're scared that somebody or something else is bigger than they are. They're feeling little when they're in fear. They think somebody else has more power than they do. Fear is vulnerability with a whole bunch of armor.
Indeed.
Okay? So listen. That's the best thing that you could do, is have some compassion for them. Listen to what they are afraid of. And you might wind up actually even affirming their experience. Gosh, I can hear that must have been really hard for you. That must have been really scary. That must have been really dishonoring for you when that Confederate flag went down. People want to be heard. We saw this rebellion on the right because people felt they weren't heard. They felt they weren't seen. It was a riot. It was no less than Ferguson. It was just at the ballot box.
Yes. And now, as we look forward, and I don't even know if this should be part of the conversation, it's just that it feels like those same people who were in fear and feel like they weren't being heard, and now they feel like they've been heard, well, they're going to have a pretty big awakening when, you know, over the next however long, the things that they thought were going to come to fruition won't, and they're going to feel even less heard. And I don't think it's going to get any easier or sweeter from here.
Yes, that is probably all of that is going to happen. And that's not your problem. Okay? That's not your problem.
Okay.
If I can't, I feel like I'm saying this till I am blue in the face. Change happens like this. Who can you bring into this conversation? Not who doesn't want to be in this conversation. Who does want to be in this conversation? And what invitation can you extend to them to be in it? You be in it, give them a link, sit them down, have them, I don't care how you do it, but it's getting more people to this party. Don't worry about everybody else's party. This party.
That's clear.
Okay. That's your only job.
I'm sorry you're blue in the face. You don't look blue in the face to me. Thank you.
That's it. That's anything else is farting in the wind. Anything else is farting in the wind and being more part of the problem. They like that.
Yeah.
So people-
It is. That's their locker room talk. Bring it down to the boys level.
Keep it real. Keep it real. Anything else other than that is just not. Last word.
I have this visual that I want to share. I see the United States covered and cloaked in a beautiful white, spotless cloak wrapping around the United States. And now it's time for the white cloak to be discarded, and the new cloak gets to be the most beautiful patchwork, tapestry, rich fabrics of every color, rich textures of every color, like your grandmother's quilt, like this beautiful tapestry is the new cloak that goes around the United States.
Yes.
And how is it my part to build that tapestry?
Exactly.
And I will find a way. Each person's way is different. Each person, every person's way is different. I'll find my way.
Yes.
I'll find my way. And if we ask our guides, and if we ask God to show us the way to make the change, it will be revealed to us.
Yes.
I know this.
It will. It will. I'm gonna end on this image. Thank you. It happened yesterday, and it was just so telling. This very thing you were talking about. So I did a memorial service yesterday. TT, who's sometimes in here with us, the one who came over on the boat from Vietnam, her son was killed, and by the sheriffs here, in a very, very unfortunate situation. And I was doing the memorial yesterday, and I had been very concerned. Her mother was in from Vietnam, and I'd inquired before. There were hundreds and hundreds of people here, mainly teenagers. It was his 16th birthday on this memorial. And I've been concerned because her mother was the only one that didn't speak English. I had inquired about that the day before. And I had been told that some of her kids would translate, her adult kids would translate for her. Well, as it turns out, that wasn't what was happening. And I wound up, somebody gave me a seat in the front. It was next to her, right? And I can't explain it. We're out on the bluff of Seascape overlooking the waves. And something just said, put your arm around her. Kind of a petite woman. I put my arm around her, and she kind of nuzzled up against me. So I had my right arm around her, and I'm holding her left with my left hand like this. And we stayed like that almost the entire time. Okay? Almost the entire time. No, the English wasn't being translated for her, but there was a language that we were speaking. Are you with me? And the fact that she was Vietnamese, we had just recognized the Vietnam vets, and imagining what it must have been like for her to put some of her children on a boat to just get them to freedom. You know, I couldn't even imagine everything that she had gone through or what our two countries had done to each other. But in that sweet moment of just holding her while we're memorializing her grandson, it's like, I don't know. I don't know when those moments come for you. Okay? To break it. To be this. But it'll come.
Ade, gotta stand up.
Okay, we really got to close.
Right. Ade?
Because we're way over.
Yeah.
Ade?
I'm going to make it real quick, real short. I think what I was going to say is sometimes when we look at things like this, even in our lives, we think, oh my God, we got to take everything on right now and change it. But we have to treat it like an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? We're just one bit at a time. It's not our duty to change the world. We just do what we can do, one person at a time. And of course, start with ourselves in a spiritual practice so we can look at where we are afraid, our own biases, our own judgment, so we could be more compassionate to others when they're afraid to let go of an unassumed belief.
Yes.
So we just got to do it one step at a time, starting with ourselves.
Exactly. This is like doing the drills, doing the practice. You can't predict the game. Let the game come to you. We're just making sure we got the skills. And we'll do some specific things, you know, like as a group, but more than anything, be ready. All right? Let's stand and sing.
Are we going to stop meeting now for a while?
No, a couple more weeks.